Hi everyone, Anthony Fade-Tano here, the internet's sniffliest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Tony Molina project, In the Fade. This is a brand new LP from singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and lo-fi producer Mr. Tony Molina. His third album, which dropped last year, I am now just getting around to it because it slipped by me and I feel like talking about it because I think Tony is an artist of note. He had me hooked around 10 years ago when I first heard his music on Dissed and Dismissed, which was essentially an 11-minute breakup album that packed a lot of punch into its very short runtime. And despite its brevity, this thing is one of the catchiest and most effective power pop records, in my opinion, of the 2010s. The chunky riffs, the hooks on hooks on hooks, the harmonized guitar leads, all delivered in the most blunt and rudimentary way possible. Tony followed this record up about 5 years later with Kill the Lights, which saw him embracing more of a singer-songwriter vibe, a classic 60s jangle pop vibe, while still adhering to his typically simple song structures and lo-fi roots. This project lasted a very clean 14 minutes and was as catchy and to the point as anything Tony had done before, even dating back to his days in the now defunct California band Ovens. But while Kill the Lights did have some impressive melodicism and guitar work, I did kind of miss the crunch and punch of Dissed and Dismissed. That was not as prevalent. But now, around 5 more years later, we have this new LP, and we are at a bit of a crossroad with it, where we are kind of getting the best of both worlds, which is a plus because it gives Tony the opportunity to really showcase his versatility, whether that be some Weezer-esque power pop or some classic 60s style jangle pop, or a little Sebadoh, or the Muffs, or Dinosaur Jr. to boot, plus the Elliott Smith worship on Four-Sided Cell, not to mention the John Lennon worship on Don't Be Far. But it's interesting because it's been about 10 years since I first heard this guy's music, and it sounds like so little about his process since then has changed. Like the opening track on Dissed and Dismissed, for example, he's singing about having to leave his town because his friends like him more when he is not around. And there's literally a new track on this latest project titled Leave This Town, sung in roughly the same voice, with roughly the same lo-fi mix, with roughly the same heavy, chunky power pop guitar riffs, and the moody vocal harmonies and forlorn guitar chords all pack a pretty huge punch despite not having a whole lot of time to develop. Plus, that little finger-picked guitar outro on the back end is genuinely touching, which is also the case for the second half of All I've Known. The track Song for Friends feels like a level up on something familiar for him too. This track could have easily landed between a few ballads on his last full length, but the vocal harmonies and the chord changes and just generally the layers on this track instrumentally feel richer, sound more beautiful. Feels like a heavier lo-fi take on a 60s psych pop band trying to work in some regal musical arrangements for a refined edge. Plus the way Tony sings toward the end of the track about having to go our separate ways, so tragic, so theatrical, which again comes off like a more potent version of something he's done before. Because adding to the theatrics here, we have some various instrumental interludes, be they Ovens Theme Part 4, or the lovely intro, or the closer Fluff, which, mind you, is his own instrumental rendition of a Black Sabbath instrumental led by Tony Iommi, which makes for a cute epilogue of sorts. So yeah, you have those moments on the LP, but there are plenty of rockers as well. The crunchy driving riffs on the last time combined with the harmonized guitar leads too feels like a new and improved version of the way Dissed and Dismissed kicked off years ago. Not Worth Knowing also feels like a crisper and more colorful take on the jangle pop stylings of the last LP too. Plus the descending melodies on the track combined with the organ chords are absolutely heart-wrenching. Not to mention the lyrics of this track contain one of the most savage burns I've heard in song, which is also the case for the hilarious and to the point fuck off now. There is a pretty strong last leg on this album as well, where Tony continues to perfectly balance his softer side with his punk origins. Years Ago Part 2, in my opinion, is a pretty significant final moment for the project, where lyrically Tony reflects, in brief, but still, given his history, I think the overall impact of what he's saying here is very much felt. He goes on about how his life has changed over the years and how a great deal of that change has been out of his hands, which I think is a pretty significant realization for him to make, given how much of his music up until this point has been about the shifting world of relationships around him, which makes listening to this album feel like I am privy to a really key development point in Tony's musical journal journey. Like with his previous releases, these tracks feel less like songs and more like emotional snapshots or musical vignettes. But now that they're reaching up to 18 minutes in runtime, they kind of come across a little expanded. Because for Tony Molina, 18 minutes is like a lifetime. I think this album is really creatively and solidly performed, produced, written as well. I think this record works as a mark in terms of how personal and refined lo-fi rock can be. And yes, I am fully aware that I'm saying that with a car seat headrest album next to my head. I truly think this is the case for Tony's music, whether or not the most discerning musical minds on the internet acknowledge it. I am feeling a light 8 on this new LP. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Tony Molina, forever.